This is We Bleed Orange and Black, the podcast for Halloween and horror lovers. Join us as we interview creators, discuss our favorite horror, and share original spooky stories. I'm Jeff C. Carter. This week, we're talking with Rainier Croft about horror for kids. Rainier Croft is the creator of Horror for Kids, a platform highlighting horror made for younger audiences. This growing community celebrates the genre's softer scares. Rainier's work has been featured in Dread Central, Bloody Disgusting, Fangoria, and BNN Bloomberg. Rainier, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeff. This is super cool. I love Halloween. It's one of my favorite days. So to be on a podcast that celebrates it's super awesome.
I have an icebreaker question for you.
Okay.
Karu Mari Odana Loma Molonu Karano or Ade Due Dambala?
Ade Due Dambala.
Very nice. Chucky fan in the house.
Of course. Chucky was unfortunately one of the first horror experiences I had as a very young child. My older cousin was watching it, and so I got a good dose of scare very early in my life, and I've always been a fan from that point on. So,
I mean, that is a nice edge case of where it seems like horror for kids, but it's way over the line, horrifying, R-rated.
Absolutely. Just the complete opposite of what my account's all about. But you know what? With Horror for Kids, I find it's cool that, there are family-friendly elements of Chucky that can be applied, like behind the scenes and working with the kids. So I always like to show kind of the softer sides, even if they are horror movie that's rated R, very hard R,
I wonder if it scared you back towards the PG end of the pool.
Well, it's funny. It's funny you say that because, and I'll get into this a little bit more when I get into the origins of horror for kids, but I've always been a huge chicken. And I don't know if it was that movie that kind of really spooked me, but I've always kind of leaned more into family-friendly scares. And so that's all part of the reason why I created the account to kind of celebrate that.
I talk about this a lot, but there's almost like a trauma model for horror fans, which is there is an inappropriate early exposure that overwhelms you, and then you distance yourself from it, and then you find yourself inexorably drawn back to it. Like you have to confront that thing that was so traumatic when you were young.
Oh my God, it's so true. And I find like so many horror fans can be a testament to that and just tell you how they were scarred very early in their life and they kind of came back to the genre in their own way, whether that be through TV shows or movies or books, however that may be, but kind of slowly kind of took smaller doses until we were the horror fans that we are today, right?
It's almost like if you were so scared that you never went back, then it didn't give you like that psychic wound. And if it didn't scare you enough, you might just be like, this is dumb. I want to watch sports. You don't have the sensitivity to it that you need to become a lifelong horror fan.
Totally. But the beauty about horror is that it's like horror's been around since like the beginning of time, and there's so many variations of ways that you can get into it, whether you're into body horror, or maybe it be sci-fi horror, maybe it be horror for kids, or maybe it be, gore is your thing. Supernatural. There's so many avenues that can take you back into the genre. So I find it's such a cool genre in that sense that like no matter what your background is or how old you are, or whatever, there's always an avenue for you to get back into the horror genre.
What took you from that first exposure to Chucky to horror for kids?
Well, like I said, I've always been a huge chicken, and so my mom used to play these pranks on me back in the 90s with that little fake finger that kind of will go through that box, and there's ketchup for blood, and I used to be terrified of that. And whether it be that or Michael Jackson's Thriller, there were so many points of horror for me growing up, and I always was so excited around the Halloween season just because I knew all the fun Halloween movies and TV show episodes would be out, and I find that really kind of feeling of nostalgia and how much I love that kind of drove me to where I wanted to create, horror for kids, which is the origins of horror for kids happened during COVID. I had lost my job and I just kind of had a bunch of time on my hands, and I love kids, and I wanted to kind of start like whether it be like an after school program or like a summertime camp where it would essentially be like a horror for kids camp. And, we celebrate all things PG, horror, whether that be TV shows, books, movies, games, do arts and crafts, send them home with little goodie bags and all that fun stuff. When I looked into just how much work it would be to kind of set that up, I was like, oh, you know what? Maybe somewhere down the line I'll get back to this, but maybe not right now. And so that kind of put me in a position to kind of start up the Horror for Kids social media account, where I was just posting, things about what I used to watch as a kid, things that used to scare me as a kid. Are You Afraid of the Dark and Goosebumps and that kind of stuff, and clips from that. And just over time, I guess it really resonated with people. And a huge factor of that is the whole nostalgia thing that I talked about. That's how we got to this point here.
To your knowledge, is there any such program that is horror focused for kids?
No, there's not. And I still, to this day, would love to start something like that up, or even kind of like partner with people, whether it be authors or whoever it be, to kind of create, like, whether it be like a little like festival, or just even like going back to the roots of like an after school program or something like that, or a summertime camp, something like that,
I feel like doing it at a summer camp is tempting fate.
yeah, that's a fair point. That's a fair point.
Some kid's gonna fall in the water. It's gonna be a whole thing.
Oh my God, no, that would be like my worst nightmare. My worst nightmare. But no, it would be like an indoor facility. It would be like
no water anywhere around.
No water.
Drain the lake.
No water. I'll show them that episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark with the pool monster that comes out.
That'll do it.
Yeah, that'll do it. But the concept of it would be more of like an indoor facility that we could go on field trips to, like haunted venues, little family-friendly ghost tours, or whatever it may be, things like that. I had a whole bunch of ideas for it at the time.
You are up in Canada. Whereabouts?
I am in a suburb near Toronto.
Okay.
Mississauga.
So you grew up with Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yes. Are You Afraid of the Dark to this day remains my favorite horror kids anthology.
Does it hit harder when you are watching the show and you're like, I know where that is? That's like the woods near me.
Totally. And even Goosebumps too has a lot of filming locations in Canada, in Toronto. So it's very cool to kind of rewatch them now and be like, oh, I know where that is, or I was there that time.
As an expert, what are the differences between Are You Afraid of the Dark and Goosebumps?
The difference between Are You Afraid of the Dark and Goosebumps for me is that Goosebumps is the bigger show. Are You Afraid of the Dark is the scarier show. And by that, here's what I mean. Goosebumps was amazing. It was very mainstream. It had the books to back it. It had all the promotions. It had this, it had that. Fox Kids was just the whole money machine behind it. So it was pumping Goosebumps out. And I think we all super appreciated that in the 90s, because it made for some amazing television and really, I think, shaped a lot of us into the horror fans that we are. The episodes are great. The production's a little bit higher, and it's stories that we would have either read the books with. So there's a whole bunch of familiarity with it than there was with Are You Afraid of the Dark? Now, Are You Afraid of the Dark was a little bit more for the kids who like things a little bit spookier. For the kids who like things scarier, these original stories where I think it went like 7 seasons, or 7 or 9 seasons, one of the two. And all throughout, you've got some of the most terrifying episodes of television that you'll ever see for kids, like just absolutely traumatizing an entire generation.
On this show, we will often throw a episode of Goosebumps or Are You Afraid of the Dark against an 80s show like Tales from the Crypt or Tales from the Dark Side, something like that. We'll pick a theme and we'll compare 80s versus 90s horror. I have found, since this is my entry into Are You Afraid of the Dark, that Goosebumps tends to go harder. Goosebumps is not afraid of hurting kids or giving you an unhappy ending. And it is the rare episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark that has like a down ending. But it also hits some really high horror marks. We were joking about the episode
Tale of a Dead Man's Float.
We are huge Dr. Vink stans here on this podcast. We love Vink, and to a lesser extent, Sardo. No Mr. accent on the dough. What was it like getting to interview the creator, DJ McKill?
That was literally a dream come true. And the craziest part about that was, like, he reached out to me via email, and it was the most casual email that I've ever seen in my life. It was like, hi, I'm the creator of Are You Afraid of the Dark? Would you like to interview me? And I was like I almost thought it was like a
spam, reject, block.
Yes, spam. I was like, what? Like, of course. Turns out he had a new book coming out, and so we did it like an exchange. So I'll help promote his book if he does anything with me. So it all turned out for the best. But oh my god, just being able to hear his stories and have his perspective on so many episodes and the behind the scenes of it all was just unbelievable. One of my favorite interviews for sure.
What were some juicy behind the scene tidbits that you uncovered?
One of the things that I found really insightful from him was that his favorite episode was when Nosferatu comes out of the TV.
That was a Vic episode, The Tale of the Midnight Madness.
That's it. That was his favorite episode to create. And when I asked him why, he said that because that was season 2. And by that time, everything was clicking. So all the casting crew, they had kind of already ironed out the kinks of season 1. And so he just said everything clicked for that one episode. And so that was really cool to hear. And when I rewatched it, it's a brilliant, genius episode. It's terrifying. It's great. What else did he say? He kind of touched on something that I was curious about, which is like how Canadian was the show. I mean, like we always kind of associate it with Canada, but he kind of made clear that it wasn't really that Canadian. Like outside of the shooting locations of, I believe he said, half of the production company was Canadian and the other half was American. But outside of the shooting location being in Canada, everything else for the most part was American. And so he kind of has this notion that, the show's not really as Canadian as a lot of people think, which as a Canadian was kind of heartbreaking to me, but it's all good. That comes from the creator, that's fact. So there it is.
I mean, it's a joint it's a co-production, but when you watch the show, when you hear the accents, when you see the setting, the scenes they go to, all these actors that you recognize, but you've seen in nothing else, you're like, oh, this is just all Canadian actors. It's all Canadian talent.
That was my perspective too.
Yeah. What are some other favorite interviews you've done since?
I am so grateful to have interviewed everyone from like the authors I have to, creators or directors. Some of my favorite, I'd have to say DJ McHale for sure. The author of the Bailey School Kids, Debbie Bailey. That was a huge, huge point of my childhood. Just reading those books was amazing. So being able to interview her and kind of get the whole shebang of how it all came to be was so cool. I recently did one with the director and co-director of Night of the Zoopocalypse. It's a movie that's out now, actually. I think it might be in theaters for another week or 2. So if you haven't checked it out, it's really, really good. It's by Clive Barker. And so I got to interview the director and co-director of that. And it was super fun to hear how they kind of pushed something from the mind of Clive Barker, Hellraiser, to be more family friendly. So yeah, I'd say those are some of my favorite ones. I also have one upcoming with another makeup artist who worked on Goosebumps. Her name is Leslie Dumbleton. And so I'm super excited to hear her thoughts and perspectives of the show too.
So we're always on the lookout for 90s kids horror, and we've covered, I think, just about everyone that can be searched up. But are there any that we might not have encountered? Can you toss out some obscure 90s kids horror show?
90s kids horror show. Okay, it leans more into like fantasy horror, but I'm going to throw one out there called The Odyssey. Not a lot of people have heard about this show, but it's about a kid who essentially is in a coma, and within his coma, within his thoughts and his dreams, he encounters this whole whimsical world of just some of the wildest, most like far out there fantasy you'll ever see in a kids production. And some of it really leans into some really terrifying territory. For some reason, actually, it's funny. One of the first podcasts I ever did, the guy asked me, he's like, have you heard of this show about this kid in like a coma? And I'm like, The Odyssey. And it's so like, I don't know. It came and it went. You either caught it on TV or you didn't, but it was really cool.
Can you think of any episodic shows like Bone Chillers or Erie, Indiana?
Freaky Stories. I'm not sure if that was 90s or early 2000s, but Freaky Stories was an animated Canadian horror anthology for kids. And to this day, I still like quote some of some of the episodes because they were so good. It focused more on urban legends, and there were some really terrifying episodes of it. I've posted a few on Horror for Kids, and people are like, "What show is this?" But there's full episodes on YouTube, so if you ever have a chance to check it out, it's a really cool show. It's hosted by a literal puppet cockroach and a maggot that are in a diner, so it's really cool.
I interviewed a author from Canada and specifically brought up one story from the Freaky Stories show.
No way. Which story?
It was the one about like somebody who gets like a maggot in their brain or something.
Yeah, I remember that one. Like I said, there are some really, really traumatizing episodes of that show, and the cool thing about it is that they're each narrated by, I don't know if it's someone new each episode, but it's all these different voices. And so you get some really wacky voice actors that come and do some amazing jobs and just retelling these horrifying urban legends for kids.
And can you name a horror for kids that you think crossed the line?
There are some episodes, and I recently posted about this, but there are some episodes of R.L. Stine's The Haunting Hour that I feel like are genuinely could be rated like 14A plus. They are that scary. And one of the ones I recently posted was from an episode called Dreamcatcher, and it literally, if I didn't tell you that was a clip from a kid show, you would for sure think that that's from a Blumhouse movie. It's so terrifying.
Did you ever hear of a show called Salute Your Shorts?
Zeke the Plumber.
Zeke the Plumber.
Zeke the Plumber. Okay, yeah.
What I love about that is that it was not a horror show, but the first episode was straight up Nightmare on Elm Street horror.
Like just went full out there, and it's crazy because, like you said, it's not a horror show. So the fact that episode one, I mean, what a way to sway perception of a show. But that episode was absolutely terrifying. I've posted a few clips from it. That scene where the kid wakes up and Zeke's like in the bathroom with the plumber. It's just absolute nightmare fuel.
Who are you?
Friends call me Zeke.
Zeke the Plumber?
Zeke the Plumber rules. I gotta respect a show that zags and goes too hard on horror, because otherwise it's all too safe. But I think that's maybe the philosophical difference between us is I think kids need to get exposed, like we were saying, like that little bit of poison that you build up a resistance to. Now and then you kind of need to lean into the scares.
Oh, 100%. And like there have even been studies that have proven that, horror for kids is great for stimulating a lot, from social skills to coping mechanisms and kids learning how to figure things out. As we said, you don't have to jump into like Chucky, but you can kind of, within small doses, kind of ease yourself into it for sure.
Do you know what's messed up? Chucky's become such a mascot that he kind of is now middle school, but probably elementary school, if we're being honest. He was so not aimed at kids when Child's Play 1 came out, but now like 8-year-olds are all about Chucky. He's swearing and killing people, and like it's really messed up stuff.
Dude, it's absolutely unreal, and to be honest, I love it. I find it in the past, I'd say I'll give it like 5 to 10 years, and I don't know if it's because of the amount of PG-13 horror films that we've been supplied with, but I feel like there's been such a shift in not like a trickling down effect of horror to younger and younger fans. Like I have a coworker whose son is in like I think he just started senior kindergarten, and he loves Chucky, Jason, Michael Myers, and she doesn't let him even watch these things, but just what he knows about them, like he's just enthralled. And so that goes on to elementary school and high school. There's such a want for horror for younger and younger fans now, I feel like, than there ever was. Not to mention, I mean, Chucky came out in the 80s when like the line was kind of blurred between like what could be marketed for kids and what couldn't, and they were like, we have shows for kids like Toxic Avengers and RoboCop and Rambo. So there is a line in there that was blurred, so I feel like Chucky has always, and that goes for Freddy Krueger too. These are like horror icons that kids just adore.
I don't know if I'm being hypocritical because I love inappropriate horror, And I think around age 12 is when you should really be getting some horrendous, shocking, disturbing material, because there's that added spice of like, oh, I'm not supposed to be watching this. I
Totally.
was the youngest of 4. And so I had older brothers and sisters, and I was always being exposed to things that were PG-13 or R-rated or, you know, stuff that I was not ready for.
Right.
And that was sort of a cool window into that world. But something about like first graders watching Scream and Chucky and stuff like that, I don't know. It kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth.
Totally. And I'm not by any means advocating for kids to watch those shows. There's an abundance of horror for kids. I have a whole account dedicated to for horror for kids that you can substitute that with. As you said, the reality is, like, especially you being the youngest, you're exposed to these things. And so I find it's up to the parents and the mentors to kind of help explain things and transition kids into a more age appropriate horror section that they can enjoy, but also be scared by.
I think it was once upon a time on the parents and the teachers and the older brothers and sisters to gatekeep that stuff and determine what was appropriate. But with the internet, you can put a V chip on your TV, or I don't even know if that's even a thing anymore. But very, very young kids are now getting exposed to Hellraiser and Freddy and Saw and, you know, Jigsaw and stuff like that. Terrifier, right. Yeah, 100%. And it's not just like a situation where I'll go and see an R-rated movie and a couple will bring in like a bunch of young kids. And I'm like, what the heck? What am I seeing? It's also that things like Chucky, Jigsaw, Michael Myers, and Jason, Freddy less so, have become sort of pop culture icons. There's something very chibi or Funko Pop about those iconic looks that really draw kids in. It's like Joe Camel on a pack of cigarettes. It's like, ooh, what's that? I want to know more. In a way that
totally,
Freddy is not.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think this kind of circles back to me saying that, you know, there's been a trickle down effect of horror that's meant to be for adults into more younger audiences. Because I even remember there being, and I posted about this, I even remember there being a Funko video, like almost like an episode that they did a Freddy vs. Jason game show to kind of like spoof the movie. And they did it, as you said, kind of in that like chibi animation. I think it went viral for them. Like it was so big, kids loved it. And you know, there's been so many spoofs and parodies of these horror movies and icons that have made their way into cartoons or kids shows today.
Right.
You know, Gumball is one of the big ones, SpongeBob even, like, and so there's this line that's being blurred that we just have to be responsible about.
Good luck keeping stuff off the playground, because on the playground, horror is currency. I saw this thing I'm not supposed to see, and I'm going to tell everyone, and now I'm the cool kid. And, you know, I've been that kid. I've been the one bringing horror books and Fangoria to the playground and stuff like that. Kids want to push boundaries and test limits. I just don't know how we put that genie back in the box, and I'm not sure it matters. At the end of the day, horror is for everyone, and people can self-select and go to whichever end of the pool they want to. It's just kind of weird to me that like really little kids are seeing bodies hacked up and they're like, yay, I love that guy.
Totally. And I think that there's a way to, if you do find yourself in a position where, you know, your kid is obsessed with Jason or Freddy Krueger or whatever, there are ways to allow them to kind of fester in that concept without showing them the films, whether it be, okay, let's draw Michael Myers, or coming up with concepts as to why he's holding the knife, or, you know, like maybe he's going to a barbecue, maybe he's, so for, especially for like when we're talking like grade 1, grade 2, like there are ways to kind of, if you find yourself in a position that your kid's obsessed with R-rated horror icons, to kind of keep it PG with them. But as you said, it's very hard, especially in today's age. You just said you used to bring Fangorias to school. Now, I mean, kids can just pull out their phones and show them the latest scene in whichever movie of this person getting hacked to pieces, right? So it's so instant, right? And I worry about what that could do for a young child's mind, especially, you know, in the young developing ages of elementary. But yeah, it's something that I don't know if we can put that genie back in the bottle.
And, I hear myself, and I'm a gorehound. I love horror. I always have. And this seems like so much pearl clutching because you go back 50 years, 100 years in our history, and kids were being exposed to the most horrific things, slaughtering livestock and public hangings and like just all sorts of nightmarish stuff, working in factories. Their little fingers getting torn off inside grindstones and things like that. So, of course, it being 2025, we're making way too much over something that's purely fictional.
Totally. That actually takes me back to a story of I had posted on Horror for Kids a video of a stingray that was eating a fish, and it went pretty viral. And I had captioned it something along the lines of like, oh, well, that's traumatizing. It got a lot of backlash, and actually a new trend emerged from that post of people hashtagging, well, that's traumatizing, and quoting it with real experiences that they faced as kids. Like, oh, yeah, you think that's traumatizing? Last summer, a bomb blew up my whole village. Like, well, that's traumatizing. And so I was like, oh my God. But it just goes to show there are real horrors everywhere. And so there's no matter, you can't escape it.
You can't escape the horror. That should be the new motto for Horror for Kids.
Yeah, I can't escape it.
Might as well get started early because you can't escape the horror.
Might as well get started early, ... because you can't escape it.
Horror for Kids. Are you ready to dive into some Halloweeny questions?
Yes, absolutely.
My first question, just to sort of set the tone, is what was Halloween like where you grew up?
Halloween where I grew up was the best. It's that sense of community where the whole streets, everyone was outside trick-or-treating. It's something that you planned about for weeks ahead. That day at school, you were all psyched up, all pumped to go out with your friends. All the Halloween specials were on TV. You were super excited to get juiced on candy. Halloween was about creativity and being scared and pushing the limits of how much you could be scared, for me at least. The thing that I love and hate about Halloween is that it's only one day. And so I've always, my whole mantra has been to like celebrate Halloween like all year, but especially like October 1st, I go super hard. So that's like the whole month for me. I just try and get the most out of it because I just remember how much fun I used to have as a kid.
What was your best and worst Halloween costume?
My best Halloween costume, I'd have to credit it to being my grade 3 costume, which was a werewolf. My mom, who was my Halloween special effects artist, she had put me in this like white dress shirt and these jeans that were too small for me. And she cut them up and she stuffed them with she stuffed and glued them with costume hair of all these like browns. And it looked really wolfy. And I had this little mask that went around my face too. It wasn't like a full mask. It was like sideburns of like wolf hair. And I just remember my teachers and my classmates were so impressed with it. They're like, yo, that's the coolest costume. And I had the fangs and everything. So I still remember that. That was the 3rd grade. Wow. But I still remember how just impressed everyone was with that.
When you describe it, I am picturing Big Wolf on Campus.
Oh, God. You know about that? Man, that's so cool.
Love Big Wolf on Campus.
Dude, I watch that so when I come home from work, I have like a playlist of shows that I usually watch. Erie, Indiana, Goosebumps. Big Wolf on Campus is like my show. I grew up watching it on TV, so I've loved it. It's got some great episodes, some real horror references. So it's a great show. I'm so glad you brought that up.
We have covered a few episodes on our show, but our favorite so far have been the Corey Haim and Corey Feldman episodes.
Yes. Oh my God, I love those episodes.
In the lore of Big Wolf on Campus, the Coreys were turned into vampires on the set of Lost Boys, which is my favorite
Lost
movie.
Boys, I know.
So
That's Lost Boys was such a staple in there.
Yeah.
That's just a classic. I used to love Big Wolf on Campus, and I feel like shows like that too are Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark get a lot of the credit, but it was also the kind of more obscure shows like Big Wolf on Campus that introduced kids to horror concepts for sure.
Oh, do you have a worst costume?
Yes. Okay. So worst costume would kind of be worst experience kind of thing. My mom had spent like months. I told her that I wanted to be a spider. This would have been like early, like probably like, I don't know, sixth grade. I told her that I wanted to be a spider. And so she just went full Rick Baker and like built me this like near animatronic like costume that had a headpiece and she had like 8 arms and legs that she had like sewn in that could move. And she unveiled it to me the morning before school. So I was to wear to school and she was so proud of it. And I looked at it and all that went through my mind was how much I was going to get bullied and teased for this over the top movie ready costume. And I told her, I was like, Ma, you know what? This looks great, but like, I'm just probably going to wear this little crappy old mask. And she was so crushed. And we laugh about it now, but she was so hurt by that because she had just spent months buying this stuff and putting together this costume for me. So that was probably my worst Halloween costume memory that I
Oh
have.
my gosh, that is heartbreaking. Oh, poor
I
mom.
know, so crushing, so crushing.
Although, I mean, I got to remember in middle school, the emotions around everything are so elevated, but like costumes.
Yeah, there were girls that I probably was interested in. I'm like, oh, they're not gonna see me in this. Like, there was a whole thing. It was layered, but I was really grateful to my mom for doing that. I just couldn't wear it.
It's a touchy time. And then when you add the love of Halloween and all the pressure you put on it, you add that into the mix. And I feel like there were many times in middle school where like I would want to tear my costume off right before school because I'm like, this sucks. It didn't come out because, I didn't have the skills to pull off, like in my head, this Gumby costume was going to be so sweet. And then once I'm smearing this tiny green crayon on my face, I'm like, I don't look like Gumby. Ah!
Oh man, we've all been there. We've all been there. It's all good, man. Halloween has just meant the world to me. So much so that, and I know this is an audio only podcast, but I have it tattooed on my hands, just the word Halloween. And I love it so much. I have Halloween tattoos all over my body, clothing, and just the whole thing.
I have seen a picture of the Halloween tattooed across your hands, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. I got to ask him about that because I also know that Rainier is a makeup artist. And I was like, did he just do that with like henna or is that permanent?
No, that is very permanent, but I am a makeup artist. But yes, no, that's very permanent to show off my love of Halloween.
That is fantastic.
Thank you.
You are now officially the new host of my show because I can't.
We can co-host.
Okay, we can co-host. Sorry, Ryan. Should have been here.
Sorry, dude.
Well, this is a great segue into the makeup aspect of it. I was watching you on another podcast with Girl That's Scary, and you were talking about going to school for special effects makeup. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So yeah, so I really wanted to get into special effects makeup, and that's the whole like blood gore thing. That was all that was on my mind, and the obstacle that I ran into was to get into that program. You had to do 2 years of just basic like beauty makeup.
Mm-hmm.
I was coming off of a basketball scholarship, so like the last thing that I knew about was makeup. And I remember like the first day of school, like the girls in my class had to like show me, okay, this is blush, this is eyeshadow. Like I knew nothing. But I had to do 2 years of that to get into the special effects program. I graduated from that program and I kind of got tossed really hard into like the fashion and TV side of things. So I never had the chance to really get into special effects. I never took the program. I never had the chance to really get into that side of the industry. I did have the chance to intern. I don't know if you've ever seen the show Hannibal
Yes.
before. Hannibal on Netflix. So there's an episode. It's so crazy actually because there's an episode of Hannibal where the serial killer has constructed what's like a totem pole of like severed limbs, and there's severed heads and arms and legs. And so I was a part of the team that built that. And so I had the chance to like color all the severed pieces and blood detail them and do the veins and do all this fun stuff and then strap them to the big log that was in the studio. And so that was such an amazing experience, and I'll never forget that. And I do hope that sometime in my career, maybe in the next 10, 15 years, I can revisit and reteach myself some of those special effects techniques because that was super cool. But the cool thing about that story, though, is that the guy who got me that gig, his name was Tony Chappell, and he had gone to school with my mom. And when my mom had told him that I was in special effects and whatever, he said, okay, well, I'm working on this show, have him come by the studio, whatever. And so that's how that came to be. And that was almost 10 years ago now. You know, me and Tony were great, but we just kind of stopped talking. But I recently saw a photo of him working on the Goosebumps series. And when I looked it up, he was one of the artists that was like working every episode, creating the monsters and the whole special effects team of the Goosebumps show. So I'm like super pumped to reach back out to him and say, hey, Tony, like, remember me? And I'd love to interview him too about all that fun stuff. So hopefully, fingers crossed.
So 3 things. First, your mom should have made you wear that spider costume from 6th grade because she gave you the hookup.
Yeah, that's true.
2, it's interesting that you are a chicken, as you say so yourself, and you were going to school pursuing special effects makeup because I feel like that is a way to live in both worlds. Like you get all the horror and gore, but you also can turn on the lights and look behind the scenes and see all the smoke and mirrors behind it.
Absolutely. And that was, you know, my whole family's thing for a very long time was like, you love special effects, makeup and blood and gore, but like you're the biggest chicken we know. So like, how does this work? And it was through means like that, where it's like, you know, if I can kind of see the behind the scenes of it, at the time I was a little bit more at ease. But what's funny is I'm so much not a chicken now and so much of like a gore lover now. And it's all credit to Horror for Kids because the amount of horror accounts that I follow that just casually will post scenes from like the most goriest movies you've ever seen, and like as I'm waiting for my post to upload, I'm just watching this girl get sawed in half, and so I've built up such a tolerance to gore that I actually love. I actually now like find myself revisiting a bunch of horror movies I was too scared to watch back when I was a kid or like a teenager because of I can handle it now, and so it's great.
Nice. It's so interesting to me as someone who was also interested in pursuing special effects makeup. I've sort of self-taught in doing stuff for home movies or doing stuff for Halloween costumes. Then I moved to Los Angeles and I got access to some really awesome like professional makeup. I'm like, okay, these are foam latex prosthesis. This is the spirit gum. This is the better kind of spirit gum that we wear. Colored contact lenses and stuff like that. I was like, okay, I want to get into special effects makeup, but it's like, you needed to start when you were 14 and you should have been an apprentice by age 18. The fact that you went through beauty makeup first is very interesting to me because I remember I was working on a friend's short film or something, and they're like, do you also do beauty makeup? And I was like, I literally do not know the first thing about blush. Foundation, yes, layering and some contouring, but that is like artistry in a way that it's almost like you can't hide your mistakes the way you can with special effects. You can always just chuck another bucket of blood on something, in a pinch. You probably shouldn't do that with beauty makeup.
No, it's so true. The first thing I'll say, dude, though, is that it's never too late. If it's something that you're super like passionate about, keep doing it, keep practicing, especially if you're in LA, like you have access to so many, I'm sure, like workshops or artists who I'm sure are willing to show you a thing or two. And just if it's something that you're super into, keep going for it because I would love to see your work. But yeah, as you said, there's a bit of a difference there in terms of what you can and can't get away with when it comes to makeup, like especially so I work on a news television show, so my news anchors have to look a certain way every single day, especially with today's HD super 4K cameras. Yeah,
crazy bright lights. Yeah, oh my gosh,
I have to make sure that they look their best. And so not to say that it's harder to do than special effects because it's just a whole different set of artistry really, but yeah, it's very challenging sometimes.
I am super impressed with beauty makeup. I think that's awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I graduated from that program. It's a 2-year program. I got my diploma. Actually, that interview with Girl That's Scary, I think I filmed it in the classroom that I was teaching because I teach now as well in that same college. So,
oh wow,
which is honestly super fulfilling, and I get to meet so many people. And on the first day of class, the first thing I asked them was, "What do you want to do here? Do you want to get into TV, fashion, movies?" And I'd say, truthfully, dude, like 70% of them say they want to get into horror. And it just makes my heart so happy. And they're just the most creative little kids. Their minds are so cool. So I'm super pumped for the future generations.
And the rest of them, you give failing grades?
Yes, absolute
Good.
fails.
What are some of your favorite TV specials?
TV specials for Halloween. So I actually collect Halloween TV specials. I have a folder of like, I think like 4 gigs of them. I'm just obsessed. Every single year I collect them. Some of my favorite, of course, I'm gonna say like the super obvious one here, The Haunted Mask, Goosebumps. That always brings me back to Halloween. Carly Beth with the whole vibe of the whole show is just fantastic. My guilty pleasure is watching like 90s sitcom Halloween specials. So everything from like, I'm gonna like age myself here, like Home Improvement had some of the best Halloween specials I remember, like Roseanne, like
The best.
Fresh Prince had some good ones, and so I really enjoy watching sitcom Halloween specials. Modern Family is one of my favorite shows. They went on like a 7-season, 8-season run of like some of the funniest Halloween specials you'll see modern day. So yeah, anything with a sitcom and Halloween, it's right up my alley.
Through this podcast, the only episodes of Family Matters I've ever seen have been the Halloween episodes.
So good.
They're so incredible. They completely blow my face off. I love that I live in this weird tributary side dimension, darkest timeline where Family Matters is all horror all the time. Like, as far as I know, all the pieces I can put together, it's all Stevel and Stevel 2. So I always look forward to those. What was your best and worst Halloween?
Oh God, my best and worst Halloween. Okay, here's what I'll say. My parents divorced when I was like 12 or 13. And so no, I would have been, I was about 12. And I've got 3 younger siblings, and so Halloween, I would see my dad on the weekends, but Halloween was always like a for sure day that I knew that my dad would come and me and my siblings would go out trick-or-treating. And so that's always meant a lot to me, was that I knew that like in some traumatic child way that like my family was all going to be together for one day of the year. And so I always loved that part about Halloween. Outside of the obvious of the candy and the community and my friends and the costumes, all that stuff. I'd say the worst experience I've had on Halloween is actually a pretty funny one. Not for me at the time, but I was young, and I went to this house, and they had the old trick of the guy who's like being still and not moving. And so me not have ever experienced that before, thought that it was like a prop or something. And so I went to take the candy, and he like jumped up, and I remember like I said hell with my costume. I ran off the porch, like flew across, like didn't even care if a car was coming, flew across the street, just running as fast. I was so scared. So scared. So that's probably the worst, but the funniest.
I mean, looking back, maybe the best?
Yeah, totally. So that's why I'm like the worst, but also I had a lot of fun with it.
That's the dark magic of Halloween, is that something that is like truly horrifying on any other day is actually the point. Like, it's kind of awesome. That's a high watermark for Halloween.
Totally.
It occurs to me, and I've spoken to people with every kind of family about this. As the youngest of 4, I was able to trick-or-treat up until around 12 or 13, which is kind of the cutoff for most people. And then at that point, I was the youngest, and then I was too old to trick-or-treat. When you are the oldest in the family, you can kind of keep that party rolling with all your little siblings, and that is so awesome. That's got to be such a different experience for trick-or-treating for like 15 years.
Yeah, kind of, right? So like, you're the youngest of 4. I'm the oldest of 4.
Right.
So I had the chance to, like, up until my sister, she was the last one. But then, like, too, like, as they're getting older, you're also thinking more like Halloween parties as opposed to like taking your siblings. I mean, I would always make time to take my siblings. It only took like half an hour, whatever. But you kind of grow up too. So it's a bittersweet feeling for sure.
There's a squeeze on both ends, but I'm glad that you got a couple extra years of trick-or-treating. trick-or-treating.
Thank you.
What is and this is actually going to be an interesting question because of your technical expertise. What is an impossible costume that you've always wanted to try but could never achieve?
Impossible costume. I would have to lean into something makeup based. So when I think of like complexity, I think of like trying to nail Freddy Krueger's look would be pretty hard to do. I mean, you look at the original and the makeup is just so creepy. There's tendons that are like the details of it all are just so well done. I can't imagine how long that would take to color, all that stuff, to sculpt all those lines and burns. I just think that would be truly like really hard to do.
How much of that, and this is a little inside baseball, how much of that do you think is down to shooting on film and really good cinematography? Because those movies were done on a pretty low budget. Every sequel to Nightmare on Elm Street had a smaller budget than the one before. The techniques have come so far since the 80s. So I wonder if you're not holding it to a higher standard of like intensely detailed burn makeup that can hold up to HD cameras. Whereas back then, there's like maybe a little latex, a little foam rubber, some really good airbrushing.
For me, it's all perspective, right? Like you have, for example, the reboot of A Nightmare on Elm Street that I believe integrated a little bit of CGI into the look, which is something that, most studios do now, whether we like it or not. And, now I can only imagine now we probably lead into like AI, which is even further. But when I'm watching, I try to remove myself from the makeup artist point of it, because then I feel like I'm becoming like over analytical and I'm looking like, oh, that's not right.
Right.
And it kind of takes me away from the movie or the show. So I just try and watch it for what it is. But I will say this, shout out to the artists of even the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, who didn't have the assistance of CGI or AI and had to rely on pure talent or cinematography, movie magic to create the scares that we got, because it's like literally stood the test of time through decades, right? And it's just absolutely incredible what they were able to do with makeup and prosthetics and pioneering this whole creating monsters, right?
100%. That's part of the reason why I love 80s horror so much, is that it holds up and will hold up forever.
Totally.
Do you carve pumpkins?
Okay, so what me and my fiance have started to do, instead of carving pumpkins, when we go to a Halloween party, we are now the people that bring the pumpkin full of liquor. And so there's actually this pump that you can get from Spirit Halloween that you literally like funnel into the pumpkin, and so everyone loves that. We bring that. It's like a party trick now, so it's our thing. And so that's my adult version of carving a pumpkin, I'd say. But I would love to. I would love to still.
Every year for the past 13 years, my wife and I have been having Pumpkin Palooza, which is a pumpkin carving party.
Oh my God, I love that.
I have never done the booze pumpkin, so now that's on my list. Thank you.
Okay, please, this year, check it out. I think you can get it from Spirit Halloween. You probably can get it from Amazon too, but Spirit Halloween will for sure have it. I would love to see your booze pumpkin.
I'm going to order that today because I can't risk like forgetting. Awesome. Best and worst candy.
Oh, best and worst candy. I love chocolate, especially Mars bars, or I think in the States you guys have Milky Ways, which are even better than Mars bars. But Milky Ways, Mars bars are my favorite. And I would always love to get the mini ones. I never really cared for the big ones on Halloween night, like the full bars. There's always a thing with full bars. I was happy with the miniature ones because I can like pop and go, right? Like pop and go. So I was on the move.
You don't have time for a full-size bar.
No, I don't have time for a full bar. This is just enough fuel to get me to the next street, you know?
I like that. Very practical.
Worst candy. I'm not a fan of taffy candies, the ones that are super sticky, they come in that little brown packaging. God, I forgot they're toffee. I'm pretty sure it's toffee. But I'm not a fan of that at all. I feel like it's all over my teeth and not into it.
Candy corn, thumbs up or thumbs down? Yay or boo?
Thumbs down, thumbs down. I am not. Here's the thing about me and candy corn. I love what it represents. I love that it's a symbol of Halloween. I'm all for that. I will support it in that sense, but I do not like the taste of it at all.
Will you eat it anyway just to represent Halloween?
I will have one on Halloween.
I'm so glad I asked that follow-up question, and I'm so glad you answered the way you did, because I was going to have to send a group of people over to hold you down and remove the Halloween tattoo from your hand.
I will have one on Halloween to commemorate the day, yes.
Fantastic. The threefold autumn stripe Eucharist of Samhain.
Oh, God.
I love it. I'm going to ask you for a Halloween treat. Can you recommend a book, movie, game, food, or experience, past or present, that puts you in the Halloween mood?
It's a movie. It's Casper, actually. Casper the movie really, really puts me in the Halloween mood. It was one of my favorite Halloween movies to watch as a kid, and even as an adult. There's so many themes that work for both kids and adults. But the overall vibe of Halloween and like the school Halloween party being held at the mansion and the costumes and Casper and the uncles, and it just throws me so much into this like nostalgia fit that I can't help but love everything about it. And so that movie really takes me back to Halloween.
Cool. I'm going to bust out something special. One moment. All right. Since this is horror for kids, I'm breaking out one of my most kid-friendly Halloween treats, which is the Halloween Goblin. Here, I'm going to hold this up to the camera for Rainier.
That's so cool. Wow.
And actually, you can see how he is supposed to look in his ideal form.
Oh, the pumpkin head is awesome.
So
I love that.
Every year on October 1st, I bring out my Halloween Goblin. It's one of those things you put in water and it expands like 300%. Just a cute little guy with overalls and a jack-o'-lantern head. And the inscription on the package says, "Rescue the Halloween Goblin and save Halloween. If you do, Halloween will last forever. There will be plenty of treats for everyone. He will protect you from all that is evil. Your bag of candy will be bottomless and filled with only the good stuff that you like. He will let you make a little mischief and take the blame for it."
That's the most wholesome Halloween poetry I've ever heard. That's adorable. Holy smokes. That's so, just the concept of like expanding in water just takes me right back to a kid.
He grows throughout the month of October.
That is so cool.
And so I have like a little reminder in my phone. I'm like, it's October 1st. I gotta put him in.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
Now this says 600% increase in size. I don't know. The original one this isn't my first Halloween Goblin. The first one I had like swollen and contracted so many times over the years that he like started to really look like Toxie.
The form.
Never quite went back the same and kind of deflated in weird ways. So eventually I had to like scour the internet and every factory in China to find someone else that was making these very specific Halloween goblins.
That is so cool. Kudos to you for that, man. That's awesome.
Thanks. So Rainier, what are you working on next?
I'm preparing for that interview with Leslie that I was talking about, the makeup artist behind Goosebumps. I'm really excited about that. I'm also working on an interview with the director and the co-director of this family-friendly zombie movie that I was recently made aware of on Tubi called Glowsies. It's a really fun movie with these zombies that instead of like biting you, they like vomit all this radioactive slime all over you. And so they've found really cool ways to make like a zombie movie family friendly. So I'm really excited to interview them. And yeah, my interview with director and co-director of Night of the Zoopocalypse should be coming out soon. So I'm working on that. And I'd say those are my main projects. I am trying to grow my Instagram audience. I just find that I really love the sense of community that I have over there. Not to say that I don't have that on X. I love my followers on X. But I am trying to grow the Instagram account. So that's pretty much what I'm working on now.
speaking of social media, where can our listeners find you?
You can find Horror for Kids on Instagram at Horror for Kids. You can find us on X, or formerly Twitter, at Horror for Kids, and Facebook at Horror for Kids with a numerical 4.
Rainier, thanks for chatting with us today.
Jeff, this was so awesome. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. This is great.
And since you bleed orange and black, let me be the first to wish you a very, 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 very early Happy Halloween.
Thank you, Jeff. Happy Halloween to you. Happy Halloween to your podcast. Shout out to you for having a whole podcast on the celebration of Halloween. I think it's super cool, and kudos to you. Keep it up.
Thanks for listening. Please subscribe and follow. We're now on YouTube. Links are in the show notes. You can find me at jeffccarter.com and hit the link to pick up my collection. We Bleed Orange and Black. 31 fun-sized tales for Halloween. Until next time, stay spooktacular.
Let's see what else you have inside your head.